The Sega Megadrive, a necessity for gracious living.
If you have been watching my content over the last 18 months, then you now probably know that there is a ridiculous amount of weird and wonderful Sega machines out there. Everyone has heard of the quirky add-ons like the Sega Mega CD and 32X, to bizarre hardware variations such as the Mega Jet and Wonder Mega. There is probably a unique piece of Sega history out there for everyone. We have even looked back at what we know about various cancelled Sega systems, such as Neptune, Pluto and Jupiter, for example. However, in today's special upload, we're going to go back in time and look at the tale of some hardware that did see an official release. In this peculiar video, we are going to look at the saga of a system that was not just capable of playing Sega Mega Drive games, but MSX games as well, meaning that the machines are therefore amongst the most intriguing around. So, without further ado,
I am Lady Decade and this is the story of the secret Sega MSX hybrid system.
So, to fully understand today's topic, there is a fair amount to break down. While any gamer in the West could likely tell you who Sega or Sonic the Hedgehog is, fewer people are familiar with the MSX brand. So, for the sake of the uninitiated, let me go through a very quick breakdown with you. Before the likes of Microsoft created their Xbox consoles, or even the Windows operating system for that matter, the company would work with Japan's ASCII Corporation to create the MSX standardized home computer architecture. As far back as 1983, Microsoft was looking to break the Eastern market, so would join forces with the ASCII director known as Kazuhiko Nishi to conceive a project to attempt to create unified standards amongst various home computing system manufacturers of the era. Think of this as the computing equivalent of trying to make a standard, such as the VHS tape, the dominant standard used within videotape machines.
But how successful was this plan?
While MSX never reached the dizzy heights of becoming the standard for computing, it was still a very successful venture, with MSX systems becoming extremely popular in Japan, along with many other countries too. For example, 7 million people alone had MSXs in just Japan, and that's before we even mention the rest of the world. While popular though, few Americans or Western Europeans, outside of a few outliers such as the Spanish and Dutch, have much experience with these things. They were never heavily marketed in most regions in those places due to the success of competing formats, such as IBM compatibles and Commodore 64 already having two big market shares. As for the success of the format in Japan, on the other hand, MSX computers took off before even the legendary Nintendo Famicom. This would mean that in the pre-Famicom dominance days, MSX computers were the primary devices that people used for gaming, meaning some huge Japanese publishers would produce their early video games for such hardware, including Konami and Hudson Soft, with series such as Metal Gear, for example, making its debut for the MSX.
Important legendary stuff.
MSX would spawn 4 generations of hardware, which were all around 8-bit computers based on Z80 microprocessors. Aside from being huge in Japan, their computers were popular in South Korea, Argentina, Brazil, the Soviet Union, Cuba, and the Middle East. Speaking of the Middle East, this is where our strange tale takes us today. Because MSX computers were a computing standard, various companies would manufacture and produce them, with plenty of big boys getting involved, such as Sony, Panasonic, JVC and Philips, amongst others. One of the many companies that produced MSXs were the Japanese company Sanyo, which would have their computers manufactured in Taiwan. Some of these models of computers would then be imported to the Middle East and localized by a Kuwaiti-based company known as Al-Alamiya Company, with these computers then being rebranded for the Arabic market. In doing this, they would establish a new division known as the Seika Software Company under the leadership of CEO Mohammad AlSharekh. Seika Software would play a huge role in both gaming and computing history in the region by them developing the Arabic keyboard, a layout which is still used to this very day. Further to this, they would also take the computing language known as BASIC and convert that too to Arabic. Perhaps most interesting of all about today's video is that Seika computers ended up becoming the most popular way to game throughout the Middle East, topping the influence of the likes of Nintendo in the late 80s.
It's still absolutely mind-blowing to me that gaming history varies so much from region to region.
There is certainly more to gaming's past than what went down in the United States and Japan, and this is a prime example of one of those stories which deserve to be told. In many ways, the rise of the Seika brand mirrors the story of how many gaming formats were popularised here in the UK, with the likes of the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64 and Amstrad CPC 464, all rising to mainstream prominence because they were equally considered by many as educational tools. They were also gaming devices, meaning that parents were further incentivised to buy their children these computers over standard game consoles. The most popular of the Seika range of computers was the AX-190, a Sanyo MPC-2 that was localised for sale in Arab countries. While this system was hugely popular and influential amongst Arab users, it is not the main piece of technology that we are spotlighting today. Fortunately, the region would receive an extremely unique piece of hardware that was even cooler than this. The device I'm referring to is the coveted Sega AX-990, an insane MSX computer that is capable of accepting MSX cartridges, but also has a slot so that the system can play Sega Megadrive games as well. This computer is insane and would have been a dream to own for many in the West too.
Well, a dream if we actually knew this thing existed.
Being a computer meant that this device didn't look like this, but instead like this. I simply made the thumbnail mock-up as I know my largely American audience will find the device a lot more eye-catching in a console form factor rather than a keyboard one, but that doesn't make this system any less awesome. Building on this, fortunately for you lucky viewers, I have gained permission from Hassan of the channel Nostalgic Shadow to heavily feature the AX-990 he owns within this video. Hassan is a video game collector who lives in the United Arab Emirates, so has grown up with a love and appreciation for the Seika brand. Within his Aladdin's cave of gaming delights, he owns one of these bad boys complete in box, which, as you can see from the side of the box, was sold as an educational computer. Apart from featuring the alterations implemented by Mohammad AlSharekh that we mentioned earlier in the video, there are also some other rather unique factors regarding the hardware produced for this market. For example, the system would come packed with multiple user guides so owners could get the best use out of the platform possible. Some of these exist so that computer users know how to set up the system, configure it, and connect it to televisions, etc. But perhaps most intriguing of all is the green booklet that looks slightly less conventional. This additional booklet shows you how to use the platform's perhaps most unique software, a Holy Quran program. But things do not just stop there, as the machine has a total of 50 programs. MSX Basic, 4 applications, 25 games and 20 extra programs, all built in. These Seika computers were made bespoke to suit the market's needs, with very many different bells and whistles to boast. Further to this, what is interesting is that international users or those who were simply looking to get a better grasp of English could, by pressing the control key while booting, skip the system's enhanced version of 1.01 Arabic firmware, meaning users can type using English characters.
What more could a gamer or computer user in the region have wanted? This system was insane.
With so many cool computers, including one that could play both MSX games and Sega Megadrive games too, what would happen to the company who were responsible for creating the Arabic keyboard? Well, unfortunately, the proverbial would begin to hit the fan for Seika in 1990, as Saddam Hussein's Iraq would invade the country during 1990. This would be the beginning of the First Gulf War and the beginning of Operation Desert Shield. Desert Shield would see a huge 35-country military coalition led by American President George H.W. Bush and British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who would deploy equipment into Saudi Arabia so that the Iraqi presence in Kuwait could be dislodged. While the invaders were successfully ousted to circumvent business through the Troubles, Seika would shift their operations and relocate the company over to Egypt. Sadly, in doing so, they would lose many of their most talented staff members. Further to this, according to Medium.com, in an interview with Seika's CEO, the CEO claims there was also an ironic disinterest forming in purchasing homegrown machines in the region. Consumers leaned towards wanting to purchase the originals rather than local computers. Eventually, Microsoft would discontinue the MSX series as Windows grew in popularity and became essentially the dominant format they had tried to create previously. Like many countries, Seika would eventually abandon the hardware market in favour of the software one, essentially doing a Sega before Sega ended up doing it themselves. Seika, which was originally founded way back in 1982, still operates to this very day, with the Arabic language technology company returning to its base in Kuwait. It deals with products for the Middle East in e-governance, education and security, etc., with the company currently having 200 employees worldwide and even an additional US-based subsidiary. It's still pretty crazy to me that such important chapters in gaming and computing history get so heavily overlooked online, as the story of Seika, the Arabic keyboard and their MSX Mega Drive hybrid is a tale that deserves to be told.
So I am Lady Decade and that was the story of the Sega MSX hybrid. Well, if you enjoyed this content, then like, subscribe, comment and hit that notification bell that everyone knows doesn't actually work. And as is usual, I like to answer questions, usually from my patrons at the end of my videos. But today I have filmed this video in front of a live studio audience over on Twitch. So my question today is actually from Drawn Unicycle, who has asked which do I prefer, the Sega Mega CD, the 32X or the 3DO? And the answer is very clear and concise. And I could talk about the games, I could talk about what's got the best version of what, but apart from the fact that the 3DO does indeed actually have the best available version of Night Trap, which is quite the accolade, the truth is it is the 3DO because it was created by sexy Trip Hawkins. And if you're going to line up Trip Hawkins with Tom Kalinske and Hayao Nakayama, then sexy Trip Hawkins is at the pinnacle of the sexy pyramid. So that is my incredibly sensible answer that will not upset anybody. So if you would like to have your question answered at the end of one of my videos, then please consider backing my little channel over on Patreon, or indeed joining me over on Twitch, where you can join in with the behind the scenes filming and we can have a nice little chat. See you next time. Thank you very much.